Dylan sat in the middle of the busy control room, listening to the soft hum of computers and the clicking sounds of people typing. The United Human Federation was about to make history. Today was the day when humans would meet Queen Sarala of the Veari Empire for the first time. Dylan felt a mix of excitement and fear. He looked around and saw Olivia standing near the main entrance, taking deep breaths and checking her uniform. She was one of the best diplomatic officers known for. Her calm voice and gentle smile. No one wanted to mess up this important day. Everyone had trained for weeks, learning the rules of Veari customs and practicing the right words to say. Dylan's main job was to help with the translation device, a machine that could turn human language into the Veari language and back. The translation device was new, and Dylan had tested it every day, making sure it worked well. Still, he was nervous. If anything went wrong, it could turn a simple hello into a disaster. Outside the window, Dylan saw the Veari ship floating above the landing pad. It was big and shiny, shaped like a silver leaf. The ship slowly landed, and its engines made a low, smooth sound. Lights on the ship's sides glowed blue and purple, which meant friendship in Veari culture. Olivia glanced at Dylan and gave a small nod, trying to look confident. Dylan smiled back, hoping to give her some courage. People in the room watched the screens closely. They could see the Veari ship open its main door. A group of tall, graceful figures walked down the ramp, wearing long robes that shimmered in the light. At the front was Queen Sarala. She looked different from humans, with pale blue skin, soft violet eyes, and long silver hair that fell over her shoulders like water. Her crown was made of crystal, and she moved with slow, careful steps. Olivia walked out to meet the queen, followed by a small group of human officials. She carried a simple gift, a white flower that symbolized hope and peace. Dylan kept his eyes on his computer, ready to help if anything happened with the translation device. Mason, his friend and fellow linguist, stood beside him, biting his lip. The air was thick with tension. Everyone wanted the meeting to go well. The two groups stopped a few steps apart. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sounds were the wind blowing outside and the soft beeping from the computers. Dylan could hear his own heartbeat. Olivia took one more deep breath, stepped forward, and bowed. She spoke in a gentle voice, saying the greeting they had practiced many times. The translation device picked up her words, changed them into Veari, and sent the message to the Queen's earpiece. Dylan's screen showed the words being processed, and he watched for any sign of trouble. Queen Sarala listened, her face calm but curious. The rest of her group watched carefully. Olivia smiled and offered the flower, waiting for the Queen's reply. The room seemed to hold its breath. Dylan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He remembered all the hours spent checking the translation device, fixing tiny errors and making sure nothing would go wrong. But he also remembered how unpredictable technology could be. He whispered to Mason, "Do you think everything will work?" Mason shrugged. "I hope so. This is too big to fail." On the landing pad, the Queen finally stepped forward. She took the flower from Olivia and nodded, a sign of respect in Veari tradition. Then she began to speak. The translation device worked again, changing her words into English for the humans to hear. Her voice was musical and gentle, and her words were polite. Inside the control room, Dylan relaxed a little. So far, everything seemed perfect. The Queen thanked Olivia for the flower, and said she was happy to meet the leaders of Earth. Olivia responded with another polite phrase, and the two sides began to talk. But even as the meeting started well, Dylan knew they were not out of danger. Yet, the translation device was still new, and one small error could change the meaning of an important message. He watched the screens, making sure every word was right. A group of news cameras filmed everything, sending live images to people all over Earth. Some people in the control room smiled and whispered to each other, feeling proud to be part of history. Others stayed quiet, watching for problems. Dylan noticed Olivia glancing at the Queen, trying to read her face. The Queen's expression was calm, but it was hard to know what she was thinking. As the first part of the greeting ceremony finished, everyone felt a little more relaxed. The Queen and her group were invited into a special hall. decorated with flags and flowers from both worlds. Dylan and Mason followed behind, carrying their laptops and the translation device. They set up their equipment at a table in the back, ready to help if needed. People from both sides talked and laughed, sharing stories and asking questions. Olivia and Queen Sarala sat together at the main table, surrounded by their teams. Plates of food were brought out, and the air filled with the smell of spices and fresh bread. Dylan watched the Queen taste human food for the first time. She smiled politely. Even though it was clear she was not used to the taste, the translation device worked well, and people started to relax more. Mason leaned over to Dylan. "Looks like we're safe for now." Dylan nodded. "Let's hope it stays that way." After the meal, the main part of the meeting was about to begin. Both sides would give short speeches and talk about their hopes for peace and friendship. Dylan checked the translation device again, running a quick test to make sure nothing had changed. He sent a test phrase through the device and saw it come out perfect. He let out a breath. Feeling a little better, Olivia stood up to speak first. She thanked the Queen for coming to Earth and talked about the dream of building a future together. The translation device turned her words into Vayari, and Queen Sarala listened with interest. When the Queen answered, her words came through. The device in clear English, speaking about the Vayari wish for understanding and cooperation. The room was quiet, everyone listening closely. Dylan watched his screen, making sure each sentence was correct. Mason whispered, "You're doing great. The device is working perfectly." But even as he smiled, Dylan felt a small worry in the back of his mind. Technology was never perfect. Even the smallest mistake could change the meaning of a word or phrase. He checked the system again, looking for any warning messages. Everything looked fine. The speeches finished, and people applauded politely. The Queen and Olivia exchanged a few more words, their faces friendly. Dylan and Mason relaxed. It seemed like the hardest part was over, but Dylan still watched his screens carefully, knowing that even a perfect day could change in an instant. The Queen's guards stood at the edge of the room, their faces serious. Human security officers. Watch them, ready for anything. The leaders of two worlds had met, and the first steps toward friendship had begun. Dylan leaned back in his chair, trying to relax, but his eyes stayed on the translation device. He wanted this day to go perfectly. He wanted the first meeting between humans and the Vayari to be remembered as the start of something wonderful. As the sun set outside and the first day of talks ended, people began to feel hope. Maybe the two worlds could really become friends? Maybe this meeting would change history. And as Dylan packed up his things, he could not help but feel proud. He was part of something bigger than himself. Something that might bring peace to the stars. He did not know that tomorrow, a small mistake in the translation device would change everything and start the funniest story that either world would ever tell. The sun was bright outside as the second day of the human and Vayari meeting began. The embassy ship was full of hope and excitement. Everyone hoped that the talks would go as well as the day before. Dylan woke up early and checked the translation device again, just to be sure. He remembered all the hours he and Mason had spent testing it. He hoped nothing would go wrong today. Olivia dressed carefully for the ceremony. She picked a simple blue dress and brushed her hair. She practiced her speech one more time. She wanted to say everything perfectly. She knew the whole world would watch her words and her smile. In the Vayari ship, Queen Sarala prepared for the second day too. She wore a new gown of shining silver. Her guards stood quietly behind her, their faces serious. The Queen looked calm, but her advisor, Captain Lyra, could see the worry in her eyes. The Vayari people were watching, and she wanted to make them proud. As the two groups came together, Dylan and Mason sat at their table near the back, watching the screens. The translation device showed a steady green light. Mason said, "I think today will be smooth." Dylan nodded, but his fingers tapped on the table nervously. The grand hall was full of people. Human diplomats sat on one side, and the Vayari group sat on the other. Flags of both worlds hung from the walls. Everyone was quiet, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Olivia stood at the front with Queen Sarala. Cameras showed her face all over Earth and to the people of the Veari Empire. She smiled and began to speak, her voice strong and friendly. She said words of friendship and peace. She told the Queen that humans wanted to work together with the Veari. Dylan watched the translation device carefully. Every word changed to the Veari language and was sent to the Queen's earpiece. Queen Sarala listened and nodded. Everything seemed perfect. Then it was the Queen's turn to speak. She spoke in her soft, musical voice, and the device translated her words into English. People clapped politely after each sentence. It seemed like the start of a new friendship. After the speeches, it was time for the formal greeting. This was the most important part of the ceremony. Olivia walked forward and bowed. She said the special greeting phrase that Dylan had helped write. The phrase was simple, but in the Veari language, it was meant to show great respect. Dylan looked at the screen. The device's light was green, then yellow for a second, then green again. He frowned but said nothing. The translation device sent Olivia's words to the Queen, but when the Queen heard the phrase, her eyes widened. She looked shocked and the room went silent. The Veari guards moved closer to the Queen, their faces tense. Olivia did not know what had happened. She thought she had said everything right. She smiled, but she could feel the sudden change in the room. Some of the Veari started whispering to each other. Mason leaned closer to Dylan and whispered, "What's wrong? Why does everyone look so surprised?" Dylan stared at the screen. He replayed the words that went through the translator. He saw the phrase and its translation, but the computer showed nothing strange. Still, the look on the Queen's face was not what he expected. He felt cold sweat on his forehead. Queen Sarala stood up slowly. She spoke to her advisor in a quiet voice. Her words were not translated, but the tone was clear. She was upset. The advisor looked at Olivia and then back to the Queen, the Veari. Guards did not look friendly anymore. The human diplomats looked confused. They had no idea what went wrong. Olivia tried to continue, but the room was too tense. She took a step back and glanced at Dylan and Mason, hoping for some help. The Veari Queen finally spoke. This time her words were strong, and the translation device made them sound serious. "Did you mean to say those words to me, Olivia? Is that the way humans greet their guests?" Olivia was shocked. She answered, "I am sorry if I made a mistake. I wanted to show you respect and honor. If my words were wrong, please forgive me." Queen Sarala's eyes narrowed. The guards moved a little closer. The room was very quiet. Nobody knew what to do. Dylan whispered to Mason, "Something is wrong with the device." The light was yellow. For a second, maybe the translation was not right. Mason nodded quickly. "Check the code, see if there was an error." Dylan worked fast, looking at the lines of code on his computer. He searched for any sign of a glitch. His heart pounded, as he remembered a warning from the last update. Minor bugs may appear in rare word combinations. He checked the translation logs and found something strange. The special phrase Olivia said had changed one word. Instead of saying honored guest, the device had said unwashed stranger, which was a rude insult in Veari culture. Dylan's mouth dropped open. He said, "Oh no." The device changed her words. It turned a greeting into an insult. Mason put his hands on his head. "We have to fix this. The Queen thinks Olivia insulted her on purpose." Dylan tried to send a quick correction through the device. He hoped the Queen would understand it was a mistake. But the room was still tense. Some of the Veari tried not to laugh, while others looked angry. The Queen's advisor whispered to the guards, and they stepped back just a little. Olivia stood very still. She looked at the Queen and said, "I am truly sorry. I did not mean to insult you. There may be a problem with our translator." The Queen stared at Olivia for a moment. Then she looked at her advisor, who nodded and said something in Veari. The Queen sat down again, but her face was still serious. The human diplomats whispered among themselves. One said, "We should stop the ceremony." Another said, "Let's wait and see if the Queen will forgive us." Dylan kept working on the translation device. He checked all the settings and found the bug. It was a small error, but it had caused a big problem. He fixed the code and tested the phrase again. This time, it came out right. He sent a message to Olivia's tablet telling her what had happened. Olivia read the message and took a deep breath. She stood up again and faced the Queen. She said, "Queen Sarala, I just learned that our translation device made a mistake. I hope you can forgive us. I wanted to show you respect. It was never my wish to say anything rude." Queen Sarala looked at Olivia, her eyes softer now. She was quiet for a long time, then she finally said, "Mistakes can happen, even with the best technology. I will listen to your explanation. But my people and I need to know you mean no harm." Olivia nodded. "We mean no harm. We only want friendship." The Queen nodded and sat down. The room was still quiet, but the worst moment seemed to have passed. Dylan and Mason let out a breath of relief, but they knew the day was not over yet. They had to make sure nothing else went wrong. People started to talk softly again. Some of the tension left the room, but everyone would remember the strange greeting for a long time. On the news, people wondered what had happened. Some guessed it was just a simple error. Others worried it might start a problem between humans and Veari, but in the middle of it all, Dylan knew he and Mason would have to work harder than ever. They had to fix the translation device and prove to the Veari that humans could be trusted. The day that had started with hope had become a test of trust and honesty. The real work was only beginning. Dylan stayed at his desk even after most people left the hall. He stared at the code on his screen. The translator device had almost ruined everything. He could still hear the shock in Queen Sarala's voice when she asked if Olivia meant to insult her. Dylan felt sick inside, knowing it was his job to make sure nothing like that happened. Mason stood beside him, watching the lines of code and logs appear on the screen. Mason said, "We have to find out exactly what went wrong." Dylan nodded and rubbed his tired eyes. The translation device looked perfect now, but Dylan knew a small mistake could hide anywhere. Mason opened the device's history and looked for changes. They found that the new software update from last night had added some new words. These words helped the device understand jokes and humor, but it also made the code more complex. 1. Small piece of code mixed up two words in the phrase Olivia had used. Dylan remembered the yellow warning light. He wished he had stopped the ceremony right then. He turned to Mason. "We need to run more tests. We need to make sure this never happens again." Mason agreed, and together they started saying different phrases into the translator. Sometimes the translations were perfect. Other times they were just a little bit strange, not enough to be funny, but enough to be confusing if someone was listening for mistakes. Olivia came into the small tech room. She looked tired, but she was calm. "How bad is it?" she asked. Softly, Dylan told her everything. He explained how the bug had changed her greeting and made it sound like an insult. He apologized again and again, but Olivia just nodded. "It's not your fault, Dylan. These things happen. But we need to fix it before we talk to the Queen again," Mason spoke quietly. "We found the bug, we can fix it, but we have to show the Queen that we are honest. She needs to know we didn't mean to be rude." Olivia thought for a moment. "The Queen invited me to meet with her later. She said she wanted to understand what happened. Maybe you should come with me, Dylan. We can explain everything and show her how the translator works." Dylan's hands shook a little. He was nervous about meeting the Queen, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Mason offered to help, but Olivia said it would be better to keep the group small. "Let's not make it look like we are bringing an army to talk. Just Dylan and me." Dylan gathered his computer and the translator device. Olivia checked her notes one more time. Then, with a quiet sigh, they walked down the long hallway to the Queen's meeting room. Every step felt heavy. Dylan worried about what the Queen would say, and if she would believe their explanation. A Veari guard opened the door. Inside, Queen Sarala sat at a simple table. Her advisor, Captain Lyra, stood behind her. The Queen looked at Dylan and Olivia with a serious face, but her eyes were less angry than before. She waited for them to sit down. Olivia spoke first. She bowed her head and said, "Thank you for meeting with us, Your Majesty. We are sorry for the mistake today. We have come to explain." Queen Sarala nodded. "I want to understand. In my world, words are very important. An insult can mean war, but a joke can make friends. Tell me how your translator changed your words. Dylan felt his mouth go dry, but he took out his computer and the translator device. He explained how the software update had made a mistake. He showed the Queen the line of code that changed honored guest into unwashed stranger. He even typed in both phrases to show her the difference. The translator repeated the words in Veari, and Captain Lyra listened carefully to show that the device could make more mistakes. Dylan typed in some simple English jokes and let the translator speak them in Veari. One of the jokes came out as something silly about purple potatoes, which made Captain Lyra laugh for the first time. The Queen's face softened a little. Olivia smiled. Sometimes our machines try too hard to be smart. They make mistakes just like people do. We hope you can forgive us. Queen Sarala thought for a while. She said, even in my empire, machines break down. Once, our main computer turned a love poem into a list of farming tools. I had to read it in front of my people. They still laugh about it. Dylan smiled, surprised. So even the Veari have trouble with machines? The Queen nodded. Yes, nobody is perfect, not even our best technology. Olivia saw her chance. She said, maybe we can laugh about this one day. Maybe today is just the first step in learning about each other. The Queen looked at her advisor, then back at Olivia and Dylan. She said, I believe you did not mean to insult me. I believe it was a mistake. But my people need to know you are honest. Will you explain this problem to them so they can see for themselves? Dylan nodded. I will show them. I will let them test the translator so they can see how it works. If they want, they can bring their own experts. Queen Sarala smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it made Dylan feel much better. Then let us go together. You will show my people the translator. We will tell them what happened. Olivia and Dylan agreed. The Queen and her advisor led them to a larger meeting room where more Veari and human diplomats waited. The room was filled with quiet voices and worried faces. When the Queen entered, everyone stood up. Queen Sarala raised her hand and spoke to her people in Veari. Dylan watched the translator work. This time it said, we will learn together. Mistakes are lessons. Today we learn about humans and their machines. Olivia explained to everyone what had happened. Dylan showed the bug in the code and let a Veari scientist try the translator. The scientist tested different words and laughed when one sentence came out as dancing socks, which was not what he meant to say at all. The tension in the room began to disappear. More people smiled and joked about the strange translations. The Queen stood beside Dylan and Olivia. She said, today we were almost divided by a machine. But now we are united by our laughter. People clapped, and the mood grew much lighter. Dylan felt the weight lift from his shoulders. Mason sent a message from the control room. It looks like you saved the day. Olivia thanked the Queen for her kindness. We will do everything we can to make sure this never happens again, she promised. Queen Sarala replied, do not worry. Sometimes a small mistake is the beginning of a great story. When the meeting ended, people from both sides began talking more openly. Some Veari told stories about their own technology troubles. Some humans laughed about old computer problems from Earth. The mistrust faded away, replaced by new curiosity. Dylan and Olivia returned to the control room. Mason hugged Dylan and said, you did it. You turned a disaster into something good. Dylan smiled for the first time all day. He realized that sometimes the best way to fix a mistake is to be honest and to share a laugh. As he packed up his things, he heard people still joking about unwashed stranger and dancing socks. What started as a problem was now a memory that would bring two worlds closer together. As the evening came, the halls of the embassy ship were full of new conversations, laughter, and hope. The humans and the Veari had taken their first real step toward friendship, not because everything went perfectly, but because they learned to forgive and to smile together when things went wrong. The next morning, the embassy ship felt different. The mistrust from the glitch had faded. People laughed about small translation mistakes, and the mood was lighter. Dylan and Mason worked in the control room, making final checks on the translation. Device. They removed the buggy update and restored the older, reliable version. Now the device was stable. Dylan felt more confident, but he still checked each phrase twice. Olivia walked into the control room, carrying a simple cup of tea. She looked happy. "Thank you for fixing it," she said. "I have a plan for today's meeting. It will help both sides share ideas." Dylan smiled. "What do you have in mind?" Olivia tapped her tablet. "I thought we could have a joint workshop. Humans and Viari experts can show each other new technology. We talk, and they translate directly without the device. Then we use the device only for public speeches. This way, we build trust again," Mason nodded. "That sounds good. Face-to-face is best when trust is low." Olivia turned to Dylan. "Can you prepare a quick demo of human communication tools? Something that shows how we avoid mistakes." Dylan agreed and started gathering screens and demonstration equipment. They set up a classroom-like space in the embassy ship. Long tables faced each other. On one side sat human scientists, engineers, and diplomats. On the other side sat Viari experts, their faces curious. Queen Sarala and Captain Lyra arrived soon after. Olivia greeted them warmly. The Queen smiled and took her seat. People around them quieted down, ready to begin. Olivia spoke clearly. "Welcome, everyone. Today we learn from each other. First, Human Team will show how we use written and visual communication to avoid mistakes. Then Viari Team will show their methods." A human engineer named Lucas stood up. He showed a simple tablet with clear icons for each idea. He explained how humans use pictograms alongside words. The Viari scientists looked at the screen, nodding. One of them, named Varel, asked a question in Viari. Dylan translated by speaking into a separate mic, not the glitch device. The human side answered slowly, giving Varel time to understand. Next, a human diplomat named Mia demonstrated a written protocol for meetings. She showed a slide with step-by-step instructions. The Viari advisor took notes carefully. The process was slow, but steady. People began to see the value of clear, written rules. Now it was the Viari turn. Captain Lyra stood and spoke in Viari. She held up a glowing crystal that wrote symbols in Mitter. The symbols changed color with each meaning. The humans watched. In awe, Olivia leaned forward, listening. Captain Lyra spoke more slowly, so Dylan could note each symbol's meaning. He repeated them in English with his own words. The humans asked questions, and the Viari explained patiently. As the workshop continued, people from both sides started talking freely. They asked each other about life on different planets, about food, about art. A Viari artist showed a painting made from light, and a human musician played a simple tune on a flute. The mix of cultures was exciting. Olivia watched Dylan and Mason chat with the Viari engineers. Problems of code and language had brought them together. After a few hours, the workshop ended. No one used the glitch device except Olivia, who wanted to practice a short speech. Dylan felt nervous again, but trusted the repaired device. Olivia stood before the group and spoke. "Today we learned that open communication makes us stronger. We promised to keep learning from each other." The translator worked perfectly. The Queen smiled and said in Viari, "You honor us with your goodwill." The device translated back and everyone applauded. After the workshop, a small party was held in the main hall. Tables held simple foods from both worlds. The air smelled of spices and fresh bread. Viari wine was sweet and soft. Humans offered coffee and pastries. People mingled, tasting new dishes and sharing stories. Dylan sat with Captain Lyra at a table. She smiled at him. "You did well," she said. "Your quick repair and your honesty saved today." Dylan blushed. "I was scared, but I wanted to make things right." Captain Lyra nodded. "That is the true way of trust. Admit mistakes, fix them, and learn together." Olivia joined them, holding 2 small cups of tea. She handed one to Dylan. "The Queen invited you both to dinner tonight," she said. "She wants to celebrate our partnership." Dylan blinked. "Me?" Olivia laughed softly. "You and Mason, you deserve it." Mason arrived, wiping his hands. He looked surprised, too. "A real dinner with the Queen?" Olivia smiled. "Yes. Wear something nice." That evening, Dylan and Mason changed into dress uniforms. They followed Olivia to the Vayari ship's private dining room. The room glowed with soft light from crystal lamps. A long table stood in the center. At its head sat Queen Sarala, with Captain Lyra beside her. Vayari nobles and human diplomats also filled the seats. Queen Sarala stood as they entered. She wore a new gown that shone like moonlight. She greeted them with a gentle bow. Olivia introduced Dylan and Mason properly. The Queen gestured for everyone to sit. The meal began. First came a soup that changed taste as you ate it. The flavor shifted. From sweet to spicy, humans were amazed. The Queen explained that the soup used living crystals that reacted to speech. If you spoke kindly, the soup stayed sweet. If you spoke harsh words, it turned spicy. The idea was to remind people to use kind language. Olivia whispered to Dylan, "That is an amazing idea." Dylan tasted the soup and said softly, "Thank you, Your Majesty," and the soup turned sweet again. Everyone laughed. Next came a dish of glowing fruit that looked like stars. The Vayari chef explained each fruit's meaning. One fruit meant peace, another meant hope. Olivia shared bread that contained seeds representing trust. Each bite felt special to everyone. During the dinner, the Queen spoke about her own world and their lessons with technology. She told how she learned to trust people after a similar glitch in her empire's communication network had almost caused a war. She said, "Without trust, technology is just a tool. With trust, technology can build bridges." Olivia and the others shared stories from Earth about computers that crashed and messages that got lost. They laughed at old tales of spam emails and broken telephones. The Vayari listened, amused by human history. After the main course, the Queen raised a crystal glass. "To new friends," she said in Vayari, and the translator turned it into English. "To new friends," everyone repeated, and glasses CLINKED. Dylan felt warm inside. He looked around at smiling faces. The memory of the glitch felt far away now. It had taught everyone to be honest and kind. As dessert arrived, tiny glowing orbs that tasted like laughter, Dylan realized this night would be remembered forever. It was not only the fixing of a machine, but the coming together of two worlds. He felt proud to be part of history. After dinner, the Queen invited them to walk on the ship's open viewing deck. The stars were bright, and Earth looked like a blue pearl in the sky. Queen Sarala pointed to a distant nebula and said, "That is where our ancestors spoke the first word. Today, our ancestors' voices unite." Dylan looked at the stars and nodded. He thought of Olivia, Mason, and everyone who helped. He thought of the moment when a wrong word became a reason to laugh and learn. The Queen smiled at him. "Thank you, Dylan. You helped us find trust in words and machines." Dylan bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will continue to work for peace." They stood together under the stars, two worlds joined by respect and friendship. The translator device had almost caused a disaster. Instead, it became the spark that brought humans and the Vayari closer than ever. Part 5. The day after the workshop, the embassy ship was full of new energy. Workstations buzzed with conversation, and people laughed as they shared stories of funny mistakes. The news networks on Earth showed clips of the glitch, calling it the funniest diplomatic mishap in history. Social media filled with memes. People photoshopped the Queen's face onto comic scenes with captions like, "Unwashed stranger strikes again." Videos played of the translator saying things like, "Do you have sample socks?" and "Purple Potato Parade," which made everyone giggle. Dylan and Mason arrived early in the control room. Mason had printed out some of the memes and stuck them on the wall by Dylan's desk. Both of them laughed out loud when they saw a cartoon of the Queen pointing at Olivia with the words, "Explain yourself, human." Mason said, "I never thought I'd see our work become a viral hit." Dylan smiled, feeling proud. The mistake had turned into a bridge between cultures. Olivia walked in, carrying a cup of coffee. She had heard the memes and jokes, and she found them charming. "Have you seen this one?" she asked, holding up a meme of a Vayari guard wearing a t-shirt saying, "I'm not unwashed, I'm misunderstood." Dylan and Mason laughed. That is brilliant, Olivia said. Even the Queen must have seen them by now. Just then, a messenger arrived from the Veari side. He was a young Veari diplomat named Torin. He bowed politely and handed Olivia a hollow message. Olivia opened it. It was an invitation from Queen Sarala, a special celebration dinner that night to honor the new friendship. The message read in perfect English via the corrected device, "Join me tonight in the Hall of Stars, where something that celebrates our cultures." Olivia smiled. She wants to celebrate together. Dylan felt his stomach twist with nerves and excitement. A celebration with the Queen was a rare honor. "Do you think we should bring gifts?" he asked. Olivia nodded. "Something simple, a photo album of the workshop, and small items from Earth. We'll share them and she can share her own treasures." They gathered some gifts, a small wooden box from Earth containing photos and notes from the human team, and a Veari trinket they had received the day before. That afternoon, templates for the dinner were drawn up. The Hall of Stars was decorated with glowing lanterns that looked like tiny suns, hung among translucent banners showing scenes of both Earth and Veari worlds. Tables were arranged in a circle, encouraging conversation. At the center was a large crystal sculpture that changed colors slowly, symbolizing unity. As evening fell, Dylan and Olivia got ready. Olivia chose a simple white dress with a belt of blue beads that matched the Veari colors. Dylan wore a dark uniform with a small pin representing peace. Mason helped Dylan adjust his collar, and they practiced their bows. Then they walked together to the Hall of Stars, carrying their gifts. The hall glowed softly. Queen Sarala stood at the center, wearing a gown that shimmered like the night sky. Around her were Veari nobles in colorful robes and human diplomats in formal attire. The Queen raised her hand in greeting as they entered. "Welcome," she said in her soft voice, translated clearly. "Tonight we share food, stories, and laughter." She gestured for them to join the circle. Olivia offered the wooden box. The Queen accepted it and opened the lid. Inside were photos from the workshop, humans and Veari working side by side. Olivia explained each picture and how it showed teamwork. The Queen smiled as she looked at the images, turning each photo carefully. Next, Dylan presented the Veari trinket. It was a small carved crystal in the shape of a flower. "This reminds us of your ship," he said. "It shows how you bring beauty and strength." The Queen's eyes lit up, and she held the trinket close. Dinner began with an array of dishes from both cultures. There were bowls of steaming soup that changed color, platters of roasted vegetables with strange spices, and plates of sweet fruit shaped like stars. The air was filled with the scent of vanilla and something floral. Dylan tasted a bite of the soup, and it turned bright pink. He laughed. "It tastes like strawberry." The Queen laughed too, and the room brightened with shared mirth. Across the table, a Veari scientist told a group of human children about crystal gardens that grew in her homeworld. The children's eyes grew wide as she explained how the crystals sang when the wind blew. Mason joined in, teaching the children a simple Earth rhyme. The children tried to sing it, their voices mixing with the science talk in a curious harmony. Later, Queen Sarala stood and tapped her glass for attention. The translator turned her words into English. "Today we celebrate more than a meeting. We celebrate friendship born from mistakes and laughter. Let this night remind us that even when words fail, our hearts can speak." People clapped, some wiping tears of joy. For the toast, a Veari musician played a soft melody on a crystal instrument. Olivia quietly slipped away to the side with Dylan. "Thank you for being brave," she whispered. "For showing honesty and for fixing the glitch?" Dylan shrugged. "I was just doing my job, but tonight feels special." "It is more than work." Olivia smiled and touched his arm. "You helped start something wonderful." The music slowed, and the Queen approached them. She placed a hand on Dylan's shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "You and your team have shown true friendship. You have made my people smile." Dylan bowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. We are honored." As the music changed to a cheerful tune, humans and Veari began to dance. The steps were simple, a sway to the side, a small jump, and a clap. Olivia and the Queen led the dance, and soon everyone joined. Tables were pushed aside, and the hall became a space of joy. Laughter and music filled every corner. Dylan found himself dancing with a young Veari engineer named Sira. They moved slowly at first, then faster as they learned the steps. Sira giggled when Dylan stepped on her foot by accident. He laughed back, and they continued. Mason and a Veari guard did a clumsy dance that ended in both of them laughing on the floor. Finally, the music slowed again. Queen Sarala raised her voice, spoken softly in Veari, and the translator repeated, "May our future be built on friendship, respect, and a willingness to laugh at ourselves." The crowd cheered, and the celebration reached its peak. The night ended. Dylan, Olivia, and Mason walked back to their quarters under a sky full of stars. Olivia looked at Dylan and said, "Tonight was perfect." He nodded. "Yes, we turned a mistake into a memory that will last forever." They paused at the hallway entrance. Olivia held Dylan's hand for a moment and then let go. "Get some rest," she said. "Tomorrow, new work begins." Dylan watched her walk away, feeling a deep sense of pride and hope. The glitch that almost ruined everything had become the spark for a great friendship between humans and Veari. And now, as he looked at the glowing lights of the ship, he knew the real story was only just beginning. The next morning, the atmosphere on the embassy ship was calm and bright. The glitch was long forgotten, replaced by excitement for the closing ceremony. Dylan felt light as he walked into the grand hall. He passed banners showing both human and Veari symbols intertwined. He thought back on the past days, the mistake, the laughter, the workshops, and the celebration. It all led to this moment when two worlds would sign a lasting friendship agreement. Olivia arrived carrying her speech notes. She looked ready and confident. She greeted Dylan with a smile. "Today is the final day," she said softly. He nodded, feeling proud of how far they had come. Queen Sarala entered the hall, dressed in a simple yet elegant robe of pale blue. Her guard stood respectfully behind her. Captain Lyra walked beside her, holding the treaty scroll. Human and Veari delegates filled the seats, eager to witness history. Olivia and Queen Sarala met at the front. They bowed to each other, a gesture agreed upon as a sign of mutual respect. Cameras recorded every detail, sending images across the galaxy. Olivia began to speak in English. Her voice was steady and kind. She said, "Queen Sarala, today we sign this agreement to ensure peace and cooperation between our worlds. Together, we will share knowledge, culture, and friendship." The translator device changed her words into Veari, and the Queen nodded. Queen Sarala spoke next. Her voice was musical, filled with warmth. She said, "From this day, the Veari Empire and the human world stand together. We promise to learn from each other and to help one another grow." The translation came through clearly, showing the repaired device worked perfectly. Captain Lyra held the treaty scroll open on a small table. Both women dipped their pens into bright blue ink and signed their names. When they finished, they exchanged the scroll, each holding it for a moment. The hall erupted in applause. The Queen stood and raised her hand. In Veari, she spoke a blessing over the agreement. The translation announced, "May our union be as strong as the stars and as lasting as time." The audience cheered again, some wiping tears of joy. Humans and Veari rose, applauding together. After the ceremony, there was time for personal farewells. Humans and Veari spoke in small groups, hugging, shaking hands, and exchanging gifts. Dylan saw Mason talking with Captain Lyra about future translation improvements. Mason was nervous at first, but Captain Lyra smiled and said she looked forward to working with him. Olivia watched the scene with satisfaction. She walked over to Dylan. "You did it," she said. "You fixed the translator and helped build this friendship." He smiled and shrugged. "We all did it together. It was a team effort." Meanwhile, Queen Sarala greeted different human diplomats. She stopped at a table where human children drew pictures of spaceships and aliens. The children blushed when the Queen praised their drawings in Veari, calling them beautiful. The translator turned her words into English. "Your art shows hope for our future." The children beamed. At the side of the hall, Olivia's team arranged for group photos. A human photographer and a Vayari artist took pictures, then the images were projected on a large screen. Dylan, Olivia, and the Queen stood in the center, arms around each other's shoulders. The screen showed their smiling faces, a symbol of unity. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Queen Sarala stepped aside with Olivia, Dylan, and Mason. She thanked them personally. Because of you, my people see humans as friends, not strangers. You taught us that mistakes can lead to understanding. Dylan bowed. We could not have done it without your kindness and humor. The Queen's eyes sparkled. She said, let us continue this journey together. I will visit Earth soon, and you will visit the Vayari Empire. Olivia smiled widely. We will be honored to host you. The Queen turned to Mason. Your work on the translation device amazes me. I invite you to join our research council to help improve communications with other species. Mason's mouth dropped open. I would be honored, Your Majesty. Queen Sarala then took Dylan's hand in both of hers. And you, Dylan, you have shown great care and honesty. I ask you to lead a new council of human and Vayari translators. Together we will create truly perfect communication. Dylan's eyes filled with tears. I accept, Your Majesty. They shared a moment of quiet friendship before the Queen departed. Olivia, Mason, and Dylan watched as the Vayari ship lifted off. Its silver surface gleamed in the sunlight. The engines made the same soft hum that had greeted the ship's arrival days before. Once the ship was gone, the hall felt empty but full of promise. Olivia turned to her team. We did it, she said. We turned a glitch into friendship. Everyone cheered and hugged. Back in the control room, Dylan sat at his desk, looking at the translation device. It sat silently now, its screen dark. He smiled, remembering how a yellow light once caused panic, but then led to laughter and peace. That evening, as the sun set over Earth's horizon, Dylan, Olivia, and Mason gathered on the ship's viewing deck. They watched the stars in silence, thinking of the days to come. The galaxy was wide and full of wonders. They had made one new friend in the Vayari, and soon would meet many more. Olivia leaned against the railing. Do you think other species will welcome us as the Vayari did? She asked. Dylan nodded. Yes, if we face mistakes with honesty and humor, we can build trust with anyone. Mason added, and if we need a translator, I will make sure it never calls anyone an unwashed stranger again. They all laughed, looking up at the stars. In the distance, a new ship appeared, ready for its first voyage. Dylan felt hope bloom in his heart. The future was vast, but he knew one truth. When words fail, friendship can still succeed.